Hello and welcome into episode 21 of Preps to Pros, week 4, wrapping up in college football. And we got a lot to talk about. We got the juice with Andrew Ivins. We're going to break down top 247 receiver Tyler Williams' decision coming up in the next 24 hours or so. We'll also talk about some big name programs down bad right now. Miami, Michigan State, and a couple others we'll get to. Already changed in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. Deion Sanders, is he the first call? That program now opened up for business. We'll see what Georgia Tech does there, and then we'll wrap it up with our 2-minute drill. Very much like Wednesday, going to be an up-tempo show. We got to get Drew on the road, but Drew, a lot to talk about, my friend. Hey, and it's NBA Media Day. The Pelicans are coming back, Drew, in a couple weeks. What you think, bud?
I had no idea it was NBA Media Day. That's a surprise to me. I had not even in my sphere of realms. But the Florida Panthers, they play a preseason game today in Nashville, so I didn't know that.
There we go. Big fan season for the boys over here. Florida Panthers, NBA, New Orleans Pelicans as well. Repping, but Drew, let's get to it. Tyler Williams, certainly a guy that has been talked about a lot recently. Had a 2-day unofficial visit trip to Coral Gables, was there on Friday, got to see the game against Middle Tennessee State on Saturday. We'll talk about that in a minute, but a decision looming tomorrow evening at 7:30 Eastern time. That's going to be on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. What is the latest with him, my friend?
I still think Georgia's the team to beat, or should be considered the favorite heading into Tuesday's announcement. He's actually going to announce on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Now, Miami never made the final group of schools for Tyler Williams, but they were able to get him on campus back the first weekend of September, and then again over the weekend. Obviously, the Hurricanes fall to Middle Tennessee State in an inexplainable loss for Mario Cristobal. And while I think most people might have assumed that just pushed this even more in the right direction for Georgia, from what I've heard, Tyler returned back home to Lakeland High School, and he had nothing but positives to say about Miami. And Miami's on a bye this week, so the Hurricanes, they're keeping up the pressure. Today, Miami sent 2 coaches to Lakeland High School. They're going to have 2 more at Tyler's game tonight. Tropical Storm Ian, I don't know if it's a hurricane yet. It's barreling in on Florida's coast, and that has caused them to move the game from Friday to Monday. So Miami's going to get that last face-to-face. Now, they can't talk with Tyler Williams, but they can, show the polo on the sideline tonight. So we'll see. I think it's tight. I still like Georgia, but do not count out Miami, who's in desperate need of some help in the wide receiver room.
Drew, is this a situation kind of similar to what we thought earlier in the process with Hakeem Williams, that even after commitment, Miami and maybe some other teams are teams to keep an eye on?
I'll let you know tonight after I spend some time with Tyler at him at his game. I'm actually going to hop in the car and drive up to Lakeland to catch that game. I think so. Miami elected not to use its official visit this past weekend. That was an unofficial visit. So Tyler was in Coral Gables on Friday, getting a tour of the facility, spending some time with the coaches, and then he went to the game in Miami Gardens at Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday. So I do think there's a chance where he can make a commitment here, but he still has one official visit to use. Who knows? Some other schools could get involved, but this is a Georgia-Miami battle. And Cooper, I wanted to ask you, just while we're on Tyler Williams, your thoughts on him as a prospect and as a player. We keep talking about him on the show, but I think he's a guy that's really started to turn the corner as a wide receiver. Remember, he's a kid that was primarily a basketball prospect, played a little quarterback, and now he's catching passes. So just your initial thoughts when it comes to the evaluation.
We've talked about him, me and you, just talking about kind of his blossoming developmental upside. And I think you got to love the makeup with Tyler Williams. I think that's probably the infatuation between Georgia and Brian McClendon, the receivers coach over there in Athens, and then Josh Gaddis in Miami. They need a game-changing receiver. I think Tyler Williams has that type of ability. Andrew, right now, I think that's more of a limited sample size, but certainly a guy that if he gets into the right system at the next level is a guy that can change your room. So I like Tyler Williams a lot, the number 20 receiver in the country and in the top 247. So we're going to keep an eye on him and make sure you follow Andrew Ivins throughout the next 24 hours as Tyler Williams gets ready to make his decision on the 247 Sports YouTube channel tomorrow. But another guy going to make his decision pretty soon as well this week, planning on Wednesday. That is the number 1 defensive lineman in the country. That is David Hicks from Allen High School in Texas, in a 5-star at that right now. The crystal ball reads all Oklahoma, and what an addition that would be to that defensive line room for Brent Venables. You already got PJ Ideba-Warray in that room, Derek LeBlanc, who you're very familiar with from the state of Florida, and Colton Vasek as well. So, Drew, you've seen David Hicks in person. How does he kind of change what Oklahoma wants to do up front?
One of my favorite pass rushers in the class of 2023. You're right, Cooper. I saw him at a pair of camps, back-to-back camps. I think it was last summer. He was at Florida's Friday Night Lights, and then he was at Miami's Paradise Camp, and I think I tabbed him as the alpha dog at both events. I mean, this is a guy that he's got a big frame, plenty of twitch, and he can dip and bend and get low. So I think would be an excellent addition. Is he an inside guy, outside guy? I don't know. I don't care. I just know he can get after the quarterback. You mentioned Oklahoma looking like the favorite. Talking with Steve Wiltfong, the director of recruiting for 247 Sports, it does sound like the Sooners should be viewed as the team to beat. And I believe he's going to announce Wednesday, 4 p.m. ESPN. So all eyes will be tuned in on that. And you're right. For Brent Venables, this would be a huge win, especially considering what happened on Saturday night for the Sooners. They fall to Kansas State, and Kansas State kind of ran wild all over them. So, yeah, David Hicks, that'd be a huge one. And that's one, too, Cooper, where I could see it might not be over as well. That one could stretch into December, January, depending on if David Hicks elects to sign early or not.
Brent Venables working on the number 6 ranked recruiting class in the country right now. David Hicks would certainly help in that category as they get ready for a transition to the SEC. But, a somewhat of an upset, especially Kansas State coming off a loss to Tulane at home. Drew, that's kind of the perfect segue into segment 2. But more of bigger name programs down bad right now. And I want to start with a program that had a lot of expectations coming into this season. As of 2 weeks ago, things were rosy for the Miami Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal. You fast forward, coming off a brutal loss to Middle Tennessee State at home in a game where they were favored by 20-plus points. This is kind of now got a lot of people shaking their heads. Tyler Van Dyke, certainly a guy that heaped a lot of praise during the offseason, has been good up until this point in the season, even though Miami's offense has sputtered at times. He gets pulled in the second half of this game in favor of Jake Garcia. Drew, I know you're down there in the heart of it in the Sunshine State right now. What are you hearing, and what are your biggest takeaways on Miami's loss to Middle Tennessee this weekend?
Well, my first question I don't even know if it's to you, Cooper, but just everyone in general, is this loss worse than Miami falling to FIU under the direction of Manny Diaz? Because I think you could make the case that it is. I mean, Miami got absolutely ran off the field. They gave up passing plays of 98, 89, 71, and 69 yards. Yes, Tyler Van Dyke threw 2 interceptions. The offense sputtered, but the defense looked horrible. And, Miami paid all this money to get Mario Cristobal there. They pay all this money for Josh Gaddis. They pay all this money for Kevin Steele. And this, to me, is just an inexcusable performance. From a talent perspective, blue chip ratio, whatever you want to call it, the Hurricanes are by far on a different level than Middle Tennessee. And the Hurricanes, they just got out-schemed, out-coached on their own field. I'll finish with this, Cooper. I think new gambling strategy moving forward. Anytime there's a lightning weather delay, take the team that's on the road, because I haven't done a full research on this, but Miami, the game kickoff was delayed by a little lightning delay. ACC Network couldn't even put their guys up in the camera, so you're watching like this all 22 angle, and it was just a mess for the Hurricanes. And I know Auburn's first 2 games of the season versus Mercer and San Jose State, they also had a big weather delay in it, and they didn't cover in either one of those games. So something to think about moving forward, because maybe that lightning indicates bad things are coming for that home school.
Here's a stat for you, Drew. Middle Tennessee State, their first win in 21 tries against a ranked Power 5 opponent. How about that for Middle Tennessee State? They get that done. But Miami, you're talking about Manny Diaz in that loss against FIU, and you look at Miami, 3 first-quarter turnovers. The first Power 5 team to do that this season. The last Power 5 team to do that last year, Miami, right? So you're kind of looking at Miami, ready for them to turn over a new leaf. A lot of the same bad habits there, Drew. I think you said it. Just an absolutely inexcusable performance. Our Josh Pate, made some really interesting comments about the national perception of Josh Gaddis. Obviously, was noted as a big-time hire for Mario Cristobal when he brought him to Coral Gables from Michigan. And now you kind of take a step back. You're at 10,000 feet. We're 4 games into the season. Miami at 2-2. To me, this is one to kind of keep our eye on a little bit. But Drew, I don't think this is really going to be a talent acquisition issue for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes right now, as they sit inside the top 10 with the number 10 ranked recruiting class. I think that has a couple of opportunities to improve throughout the next couple months as they approach early signing day. Mario Cristobal on the recruiting trail, to me, is not going to be the issue. It's what you said, though, about a lot of those accomplished coaches and a lot of that experience on that staff. For you to have Josh Gaddis, Kevin Steele, Charlie Strong, some of the names, Alex Mirabal on that staff and turn into this performance is head-scratching in itself.
No, I agree with you. I mean, Jamal Adai, 24/7 Sports Recruiter of the Year last season. They brought in all these big names, and it's not working out. And I don't know what the answer is. When I watched that game, I didn't really know, and I haven't been able to figure out what the Hurricanes want to do on offense. We've said it in the past. I think they lack a wide receiver one, but I think they just lack playmakers in general. Jalen Rooster Knighton, he gets 7 snaps against Middle Tennessee. To me, he's one of the most dynamic players they have on offense. Elijah Arroyo, a former top 247 tight end. He only plays 30 of the 98 offensive snaps, whereas Will Mallory plays almost all of them. To me, Elijah Arroyo, he can help you as an inline blocker. So Miami's on a bye this week. You pay all these coaches all this money, figure it out, right? Obviously, some of the guys are out recruiting tonight, but this is the perfect time to get things in order. And it sounds like there's going to be an open quarterback competition between Jake Garcia, who came in for Tyler Van Dyke. It looked like Jake was felt more comfortable pushing the ball down the field. I think Tyler's a little too afraid to make a mistake. So interested to see how this shakes out. And if I'm Miami, I'd even consider maybe putting Ja'Cory Brown some type of wildcat package. I mean, you got to open this thing up and hit reset and figure it out, because you're going to have to be able to score in the ACC. Sure, down year in conference, but you can't come out there and be playing from behind the slow tempo of football. Not if your defense giving up huge 60-yard plus scrimmage plays.
So there you have it, Miami fans. Honeymoon is officially over between Mario Cristobal and Coral Gables. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's going to be interesting. But let's go to the Big Ten now. A couple teams opened up Big Ten play. That is Michigan State coming off a tough loss in Seattle against top 25 ranked Washington. They lose at home against a Minnesota team that dominated them physically 34-7. In this game. And for the second consecutive game, Michigan State and the Spartans give up more than 500 yards of total offense. Right now, Michigan State sitting at 2-2, reeling. Drew, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, the big storyline is, are we sure Michigan State should have given Mel Tucker that big of a contract extension? I mean, what is he guaranteed? $95 million over the next 10 years. This is a coach that's only 15-9. He has one winning season under his belt, and I don't know how we're certain that they're going to make a bowl game. Look at that schedule they just had up on the screen at Maryland, Ohio State coming up. I think it's going to be clawing to make the postseason. And for me, where does Michigan State go? Obviously, Mel Tucker is not leaving. He's locked in for a lot of money over the next few years. But when I just take a step back and look at this program, right, what made Mel Tucker so successful last year? How did they get to 11 wins? They were super active in the transfer portal. They did a little bit of that this year, but they also have used a bunch of counters and scholarship numbers on the high school ranks. And right now their class is sitting, I think it's 22 in the country, some guys we really like. But I think it's going to be hard for them to add to that. So that lust in what they got from that magical season last year, it's all gone now that they are 2-2 on the year. I think Mel Tucker needs to get back in the transfer portal. That seems to be his recipe for success. I mean, yeah, you keep recruiting the high school ranks. That's the NFL draft, but the free agencies where they need to turn it around, specifically in that secondary. Same thing as Miami. They are really struggling on that back end.
Lack of run game and pass defense, I think, relevant for Michigan State the last 2 weeks. And you look at Minnesota, what they did in this game in terms of their third down conversion rate, 10 of 12 on third down. They also own the time of possession, 42-40. Mel Tucker likes to talk about taking the opponents into the deep end of the water. That's what P.J. Fleck and his crew did in East Lansing. So I think if you're a Michigan State fan right now, you're a little bit at a crossroads. I think, Drew, you mentioned the next 4 games. I mean, Maryland, Ohio State, Wisconsin, in Michigan. I think you got to win 2 out of the next 4 for Michigan State as they tried to aim to get back to the postseason, but certainly already 2-2, deflating through their first 4. So Michigan State, and you talk about it, Drew, you also hit on their portal use over the last 2 years, ranked 31st and 20th in the first 2 years under Mel Tucker. I think that's been probably one of the greatest assets Mel Tucker's had at his disposal, now trying to build for the long term and kind of sprinkle in the high school talent acquisition as well. So Big Ten play there right now for the Spartans, 0-1. They look to get back on track against Maryland next week. But Drew, what's a segment without Texas, right? Texas, I feel like we talk about every week, and it seems like just when they pull you back in and they say, you know what, they're turning around. They had that close game against number 1 Alabama at the time at home, a game they should have won. Quinn Ewers goes down. They've been battling since then. I thought they showed some resolve last week against Texas San Antonio, a good Texas San Antonio team. And then up by double digits in Lubbock in the second half, they find a way to lose this game. Bijan Robinson fumble on the first possession of overtime. Texas Tech, huge win for Joey McGuire, first-year head coach. Texas now sitting at 2-2, 0-1 in Big 12 play. Now you're kind of wondering, Drew, okay, are we getting ready to go through this again for a second straight season under Steve Sarkisian? They got West Virginia this weekend. What's your pulse on where things are trending for Texas right now?
I think Steve Sarkisian has as much pressure on him heading into week 5 than anyone else in the country, right? They're 2-2. You lose on the road at Texas Tech. I don't know how much we want to talk about the Red Raiders and what Joey McGuire has done, but we saw that schedule that was just flashed up on the screen. They got West Virginia this weekend. You feel like that should be a win, but then it's Oklahoma. Eventually, you got Oklahoma State coming up. So to me, I think all the pressure's on Steve Sarkisian. He's got to get this thing right. So far, when you look at that schedule, a road loss to Texas Tech, a loss to Alabama in a game really that was kind of a coin flip. I think things are still on schedule, but you got to be nervous about things getting off the track here. You got to keep the course and keep everyone motivated and focused. So that's the big thing I want to know about Texas. How is Steve Sarkisian going to keep that locker room prepared moving forward? Because it could easily unravel here, and that certainly wouldn't be good for the Longhorns.
Nothing should scare you more as a fan, whether it's of Texas or any other program, than inconsistency. And you look at Texas sometimes, they look at like a top 5 team in the country, a team that could contend for a college football playoff. And then there are other times they leave you kind of scratching their head. So far through the Steve Sarkisian era, that's what it's been. It's been a mixed bag, which is kind of who he's been throughout his career. Now, in terms of what they've done on the recruiting trail, they're number 2 right now in the 2023 247 Sports Composite Team rankings. That is certainly good enough. That's where you want to be, with Arch Manning, the number 1 player in the country, leading the way. Last year, a top 5 class as well. So to me, Drew, I kind of take a step back at this and I look at this year 3 for Steve Sarkisian, regardless of what this year looks like. I think he's going to get another year unless the train just goes directly off the tracks. But year 3 is going to be a make or break year for Steve Sarkisian. They've done a good job on the talent acquisition side. It's just whether or not Steve Sarkisian is the right guy to take this forward. Now, I think he needs the time, but I'm more interested to see how is Texas going to respond when they hit adversity, because there were some cultural issues last year that they believe they have solved. So to me, that's the biggest question mark with Texas. I don't know, Drew. Is this more of something like, hey, as we approach the second third of the season, are you feeling more positive? Is this what you thought? Or are you a little concerned about them?
Well, remember, Quinn Ewers is out, right? He's hurt. I mean, we talked about Hudson Card and needing him to come back, and look, that kind of proved to be true. So I'm not super concerned right now about Texas. Again, we're going to know a lot coming, I think, out of this West Virginia game. Go in, get a commanding victory, and then turn your attention to the Red River Shootout, because I think that's what it's all about. So I'm not panicking just yet. I said I wanted to talk a little bit about Texas Tech and what they've had to do under Joey McGuire. I think it's impressive. And remember, Joey McGuire is a guy that was hired last November after Texas Tech elected to part ways and start that coaching process a little bit earlier than others. So I think that's something you got to think about when we start looking at where college football is these days. Sometimes schools are a little bit ahead of schedule, and Texas Tech was. I'm not saying that's an excusable loss on the road, but it's still difficult atmosphere, sold out there. And Texas Tech has taken Texas down before on the road just like that.
Well, let's piggyback off of that, Drew, because I think that's a good point that you make there, because Georgia Tech is a team now looking for a head coach, and they're looking for a new AD as well as of this morning. So Georgia Tech kind of finds themselves in a crossroad, but Geoff Collins out as of today, 10-28 in 4 seasons. Their 1-3 record this season. He followed up the great Paul Johnson in that triple option offense after 11 seasons there. Collins was supposed to be the guy to kind of bring Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets into the new era of college football. A lot of juice. That did not pan out well. So $11.3 million buyout for Geoff Collins. He's going to be living well. A lot of Waffle House for him. But, Drew, as we look at Georgia Tech, a lot has been made about Jackson State head coach Deion Sanders, and we've talked about him here on this show and why we thought he would be a Power 5 fit and why we think he is ready. To me, the time has come, but I want to get your thoughts on this, and maybe I'll be the first one because I don't want to put you in a tough spot here. But the first call for me, Georgia Tech. You look at Georgia Tech, Atlanta, where they are in the ACC. That recruiting footprint in Atlanta. What is there? 25 prospects from the state of Georgia in the top 247. We've seen the impact that Deion Sanders has had at Jackson State, HBCU, arguably the biggest recruiting win in college football history, flipping the #1 player from Florida State and Mike Norvell last year and Travis Hunter. The marketability of primetime Deion Sanders in a top 10 market in the United States in Atlanta, Georgia, I think is a perfect fit. But if I'm also Deion Sanders, Georgia Tech has to be ready. I think Georgia Tech needs Deion Sanders a lot more than Deion Sanders needs Georgia Tech. To me, this comes down to who's making the decision, and then behind that, who is going to commit the resources and invest in everything you need, from facilities to support staff to coaching staff, salary pool. All that has to be considered. And if Deion Sanders is not going to get that from Georgia Tech or somewhere else, I would stay right where he is at Jackson State. And I think he's got a pretty good thing going there. So that's going to be interesting. But I think this is a grand slam for Georgia Tech. I would do anything to get this one done.
Yeah, I could go in a bunch of different directions here. Why do I think Deion Sanders would work at Georgia Tech? I think it's because he's real. And you mentioned Geoff Collins and what went wrong with him. And you said the Waffle House stuff and the 404. Just talking with some college contacts, they all thought, everyone had this perception that Collins was doing so well on the recruiting trail. But in reality, they weren't. Sure, they got Jahmyr Gibbs, and obviously he left for Alabama, but really it seemed like all fake smoke. And I think if Prime were to come in there in Atlanta, a place where he played for the Atlanta Falcons, he played for the Atlanta Braves, the community's going to accept him. He's going to be able to recruit extremely well at a very high level, and there's going to be a ton of energy and buzz. But Cooper, you mentioned it. Georgia Tech needs to make the decision. Do we want to be real about football? Do we want to invest the money and give him the resources to get this thing right? Because what we've seen at Jackson State, as he has come in and demanded some changes at that HBCU, and he has gotten his way, whether that be new practice fields, positions for analysts, a new strength coach. He's gotten all that. Is he going to get the same stuff at Georgia Tech? So for me, my first call, I'd try to gauge things out with, how about Dan Mullen, the former Florida coach? I mean, this is a guy that has 13 seasons of FBS head coaching experience, Power 5 head coaching experience. When he was at Mississippi State, all but one season did he not make a bowl game. And if you're Georgia Tech, that has to sound, you got to be excited about that. I think when I look at Dan Mullen and what he is as a coach, he gets the most out of the least amount. And sure, that might be because of his recruiting deficiencies, but I think he could go in there and win with, the 3 stars, the low 4 stars in the Peach State. And the thing with Dan Mullen is I think he's going to get some good assistant coaches to work with him. He's a guy that's been around. And to me, getting good assistant coaches would go a long way. He wouldn't be fake with what he is there. I think it's a little bit opposite of Geoff Collins and what he was trying to sell with the 404 and the Waffle House and all that stuff. I think his personality, Dan's fiery one, would maybe fit in at Georgia Tech, that wants to be a little bit budget friendly. And the biggest thing with Dan Mullen to me is you could hire him next week and he can go out and start recruiting or evaluating his roster and seeing what he needs to do to be competitive in 2023 and beyond.
I like that in terms of Dan Mullen. The biggest thing for me with that year off, obviously he's an analyst at ESPN now, but like, can you recalibrate, right? Is this going to be new energy with Dan Mullen? We kind of saw this with Mac Brown. He obviously was out of the game for a handful of years before taking the job and accepting the head coaching responsibility at North Carolina. But if you're Dan Mullen can coach. That he has a proven track record. We've seen that from him his entire career. He knows how to win football games, and I think he fits at a place like Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech just has to make the decision whether or not we're going to commit to being a good football program. And if you're doing that, then I think it makes so much sense to invest into somebody like Deion Sanders. And I think Dan Mullen, if you're going to stay more in the same lane that you have been, I think Dan Mullen makes a lot of sense as well. But Drew, I'm going to name a couple other names here that are in consideration, a lot that we've heard from the national media as well. But Charles Huff from Marshall, that both of you and I have championed throughout this offseason. Jamie Chadwell, who continues to do a tremendous job at Coastal Carolina. Jeff Monken at Army, more of what Georgia Tech has had in the past with that triple option offense. Del McGee, who knows the state of Georgia extremely well, the running backs coach at Georgia. And then you have a list of other familiar names. Bill O'Brien, Dan Mullen, we touched on. Alex Atkins, Drew, I'm going to let you hit on that one in a second. And Bronco Mendenhall as well. But that one, Alex Atkins, he's an Oyster Boys favorite, Drew. Why do you think that one is somebody that a name that we should keep an eye on for Georgia Tech?
Oh, look at what Florida State's doing, right? They're 4-0. Alex Atkins has the offensive coordinator title there, working for Mike Norvell. And I think when you look at Alex Atkins, he's an excellent recruiter, and he has rebuilt that offensive line for the Seminoles. So maybe this isn't the position for him. Maybe this isn't the jumping spot going to Georgia Tech, but I think he would do excellent right there in Atlanta. He's got experience throughout the Southeast. Again, I think he's a really good recruiter. My biggest question would be, what kind of staff can he assemble and what kind of budget would he be given? But I think Alex Atkins is the guy that's not been talked about enough in the realm of potential coaching candidates. Maybe he needs to go G5 before he goes Power 5, but that's someone I think we as a whole aren't talking about enough, Alex Atkins.
I'm going to throw one more name out there. We didn't have him on the graphic package, so I apologize, producer Jesse. But that's Brian Hartline. I kind of brought it up last week. I don't know what's next for Brian Hartline. He is the best receivers coach in the country from a talent acquisition standpoint, and he's also very highly respected at Ohio State, Zone 6, what he's built there. But you talk about what's next for him. Is it a coordinator spot? It's going to take an awful lot to pluck him out of Columbus, and I don't know what that looks like. And if you're Brian Hartline, you might just be saying, hey, I'm good. I got the best job in the world. I'm working with Ryan Day. He lets me go out and recruit the best players in the country to Ohio State. And I understand that, but he has to be a pretty enticing guy with where he is in his career, being under Ryan Day, with the job that they do in Columbus. I think that's another name to watch out for. Maybe not with Georgia Tech, but in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if his name is getting some buzz. But, Drew, let's get you out of here, my man. 2-minute drill. I know you got one more thing you want to bring up. In Kansas State, you really like what Kansas State is not only doing on the field. Big win this weekend against a top 10 Oklahoma team. But Avery Johnson, you text me about him. You kind of love that potential partnership as well. But there was another guy on that Kansas State team that has caught your eye so far this season.
Kansas State right now, number 7 rushing offense nationally. We saw what the Wildcats were able to do in Norman over the weekend. You mentioned Avery Johnson, the Elite 11 quarterback that they got committed. But one other guy I want to highlight, Joe Jackson from Polk County. He goes to Ridge Community. This past Friday, he goes off 22 rushing attempts for 326 yards and 6 touchdowns. This guy, is he a Deuce Vaughn? I don't know. I think he's not. I think he's a little bit bigger than Deuce Vaughn, but he can find the end zone. He can run through some holes. So Kansas State, they lost a running back commit to Notre Dame earlier this season, but they got another good one committed in Joe Jackson. I'm a huge fan. 5'11", 184 pounds, 4.58 in the 40-yard dash on the lasers with the 4.38 short shuttles. Kansas State, number 41 recruiting class nationally right now. I really like this group, at least what they have coming in the offensive backfield. So I wanted to give K-State a little shout out after that big victory over the weekend.
Yeah, combine Avery Johnson with Joe Jackson coming in. That's going to be pretty lethal. The L. Roberson, Darren Sproles days back there in the Little Apple in Manhattan. But, Drew, I'm going to go with Florida State and a team that I have been very, very hard on since we've had this show, 21 episodes in. I've been a big critic of Mike Norvell and a little pessimistic about what this season would look like for Florida State. 4 games into the season, they are 4-0. And to me, Mike Norvell is the guy to thank. His team has just been, I would say, a team that has, in the face of adversity, smiled and found a way to win, whether that be LSU in New Orleans, where LSU storms back in the second half. They block the extra point. They go on the road to Louisville as well. They squeaked that one out with backup quarterback Tate Rodemaker. And this weekend, 44-14 over Boston College, in complete control of that game from start to finish. So Florida State, with what they have coming up right now, going into ACC play, Wake Forest at NC State, Clemson, and then a Georgia Tech team we just got done talking about. So the next 3 weeks will certainly be pivotal. But if you're a Florida State fan, you're sitting in this situation. You hear us talk about Miami coming off a loss to Middle Tennessee State, Florida, a tough loss on the road against a top 12 Tennessee team this past weekend. Both those teams sitting at 2-2. And now you got Florida State 4-0. Getting into the heart of their schedule, and not to mention a top 32 commitment from the number 5 receiver in the country. That is Hakeem Williams, Drew, who you are very familiar with. So Florida State starting to pick it up. Blake Nicholson as well, who they got, the top 247 linebacker from California, beat out Oregon head-to-head for Florida State, number 15 in the 24/7 Sports Composite Team rankings. Hats off to Mike Norvell, my friend. You get an A on the report card in your first third of the season. But, Drew, that's all I got. I know you're in a rush, my friend. You have anything else?
Oh, did you see Hakeem's commitment ceremony? I thought you were going to bring that up. Peter Warwick was there. Snoop Menace. I was emceeing on the stage. I didn't even know that was going to happen. No, it was awesome. Florida State number 16. I'm interested to see how these next few weeks for him go. Hopefully this game against Wake Forest in Tallahassee on Saturday isn't moved because of the tropical storm. But the avenue, we said it early on, the runway was there for them to make a big move in the recruiting rankings, and that's exactly what's happened. So I agree. Tip of the cap to Mike Norvell.
Florida State with the wind at its back. And guess what, Florida State? You are the team of the week on Wednesday. We will do a deep dive on preps to pros, A to Z, top to bottom on Florida State in their number 15 ranked recruiting class. I know Drew is going to be charged up for that one. And just a reminder, guys, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you throw a subscription on there, throw us a like, leave us a comment. We love all that. It does well for the algorithm, or so they say. But we're going to get Drew on the road here. And for Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. We'll see you back on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time.